Alright, I just saw James Gunn's Superman, the first movie in the new DCU, and I have thoughts. This is my spoiler-free review. It's going to be shorter. This is just something I want you to be able to see before you see the movie if you're like waiting for my opinion. By the way, my cat Mortimer is on my lap. He had to be here because there's a super dog in this movie and he just wants to be part of that universe. He wants to make a plea to James Gunn, put Streaky the super cat in the movies as well. But we're not going to focus on that now. We'll probably talk more about Crypto in the longer spoiler-full review. But I just want to answer some questions real quick to give you a base understanding of where I am with this movie. And I may use specific images or clips from the movie when I'm talking about vague concepts here. Don't take that as a clue that like whatever's on screen is what I am talking about in those instances. I don't want this to be spoiled for any of you who do not want to be spoiled. All right, number one, did I enjoy James Gunn's Superman movie? Yes, I did. Do I think it is a good start for the new DCU? Yes. I think more or less by being a good movie, it is a good start on its own, but also I think it does a lot of interesting things that are fun. And then 3, do I think this is the best Superman movie ever made? Yeah, I think I do. Like, Superman has always been a character that's had trouble in movies. There's a lot of different ways people have tried to make Superman movies, and some have been more successful in some ways than others. Obviously, everything gets compared to the Chris Reeve movies, and those are great, but I think this movie does a lot of things really, really well, covers a lot of important Superman bases, and just feels like a really fun Superman movie. Now, I will say one thing about the plot, without getting into the plot specifics or anything like that. I have read many reviews that use the word messy to describe this movie. And these are people who are pro and anti on the movie in general. So it's not always like a deal breaker for some people, but this is something that I've seen come up in many reviews. And I think that's an interesting way to describe it. And I understand why that's something that people say. I think there's a difference between messy and chaotic. Daredevil Born Again Season 1 is messy in that, like, it's a fun show, it's good to watch, but there's a lot of stuff where you're like, this doesn't mesh with this, and you could tell it's because things in the plot are kind of a mess. As opposed to what I would say this is, where it all feels like one story, it's all very cohesive. I'm sure there were, things that changed in different drafts and maybe even reshoots potentially, and I understand why the word messy comes up. Superman's life is messy. He's getting so many things thrown at him from different directions he has to deal with. But I think purposefully chaotic makes this movie feel very different from something that is unpurposefully messy. But James Gunn wrote this movie, and he's the sole credited writer, I believe. So, like, I'm going to say James Gunn worked this plot into this position that it's in over a long period of time. A lot of different pieces moving and getting them in the right sync. And I just think calling that messy, maybe it feels messy, but I think it is more purposefully chaotic than messy. And I think that tells a better story of what kind of movie you're getting into. Like, expect a lot, but expect it to feel like it is part of something intentional. The big question everybody's gonna ask about performances. Okay, so I will say the big 3. Clark Kent, Superman, played by David Corenswet. Very good. For me, not necessarily the greatest Superman ever on screen. I think there's many different actors, like, say what you will about different movies or shows and their interpretations of Superman and their overall quality. I think there have been a lot of good takes on Superman in my lifetime. I am particularly, and this is probably just because of when I grew up, I got a soft spot for the Brandon Routh Superman. And I think he does a lot of things right. Obviously, Christopher Reeve, Tyler Hoechlin, like there's just a lot of people that have done this. Like Tom Welling Superman, very good. Dean Cain, a guy I can't stand, good Superman. And I think David Corenswet is up there. I think we need to see more of him, but I think he puts in a very complex performance, very human performance, and that's something he's definitely going for. This Superman does not feel like, let's say, the Brandon Routh Superman, where he does have a very polished image that he is trying to project, and it is difficult for him. This Superman definitely feels like he has that. Like, there is a polished image of him that exists in his mind, but he is not at the same level as Brandon Routh Superman in terms of projecting that to anyone. This is a Superman that's been Superman for some time, but he's also, like, not perfect at it. And I think the performance is great. I think he could be my favorite Superman. We'll see in a movie or two. He does some things that are so good that I think it's hard to deny he'll be in that conversation. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. I liked her. Actually, I did really like her. I think she had solid chemistry, but also I think she just had the correct amount of pluck the word that you have to use to describe Lois Lane. She was very plucky in her conversations where she was, trying to get an answer from someone. And my one thing with her, she has a lot to do in the movie. And this is very frequently a problem that these movies have with Lois Lane. As things really kick into high gear, it becomes less and less about her. And they manage to figure out a way to make her part of the action. It's not like she just goes away for like a half of the movie or something. She's there. But by the end of the movie, out of these three characters, she's the one that probably gets the least screen time. And I think that's okay, because number 3, Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult, rules. And I love Nicholas Hoult, loved him on The Great. I think he's put in a ton of good performances as Beast. Even though some of those movies kind of get worse as they go, I think he gets better, even though I think he was good in the original ones. I was very excited to see his Lex Luthor, and I think he is so fun. He has so much energy, and he's very serious, very angry, very scary, but it's not a performance that sacrifices the camp of a character like that and some of the silliness of a character like that. So I think it's like a perfect balance. This is probably my favorite Lex Luthor on screen. And I was a huge fan of Michael Rosenbaum, Lex Luthor. And there was another actor, I think, who played him in the mid-2000s in a movie, and I think he was probably pretty good. But I think this is maybe the best full shot at someone playing Luthor, and he gets a ton to do. So I loved him. I will say there are quite a few supporting characters besides those three guys. I have different feelings about different ones. I don't want to get into them because some people may not even know who some of them are. So I will say that will be something saved for the spoiler full review. Suffice to say, for the spoiler free review, there were some characters I like more than others. Some versions of comic characters I felt were more faithful to their adaptations than others. And some, they made some very interesting choices. I thought a lot of these characters served interesting functions in the narrative, but it did feel like cohesive, I would say, is my main thing with all of these side characters. It didn't feel like we're putting random characters here or there to set up X, Y, or Z. They all had something very specific to do, a very specific function to serve in the narrative, and I really like that. Music, great. Special effects, fight scenes, all that, great. There was a little bit of weird stuff, and I will say this movie, you can kind of break it up into different zones, let's say, and there is one section that I think maybe kind of lost me with some of the visuals, but beyond that, like the flying is excellent. The look of a lot of the non-human characters is terrific, and a lot of the fight scenes are really creative. There are things that characters do in this movie, specific characters, where I have been waiting for my entire life to see one of them, doesn't matter which one, on screen, doing the things that this one does, because it's like, and this is part of the James Gunn thing, where like, I don't think he's like a perfect filmmaker. He's not like, filmmaking Jesus or whatever, but he gets comic books. He gets what they can look like. He gets the crazy stuff they can do. He understands how to marry the crazy concepts with grounded drama and all that to bring it all together. So when he does a movie that has moments that are serious, he is able to bring in the more goofy concepts and make them feel like part of that narrative. And some of that I think really, really, really works here in ways that, like, at least with these DC characters, we really haven't seen. Humor, it's funny. Now, you know what? It's actually pretty funny. I think, like any James Gunn movie, it is funny. There were a bunch of bits that were jokes that got really good reactions from my audience. And yes, this is one of the sweetest audiences you can have for something like this. Like, this is a pre-screening. It's very self-selects for people that are going to love it. But still, I think that a laugh is something that you have to earn if it feels real, if the laugh feels real. And these were real laughs. I do think it got emotional. People had different levels of emotional, like, attachment to this movie, and I could see people going to this movie like crying a bunch of times, and I could also see people going in the movie and going, wow, that was great, I liked it, but not like reacting that way. And I think that's fine. I have no problem saying when I cried in a movie. I did not cry in this movie, but I really, really liked it. What else? Do I have nitpicks? 100%. There are certain storylines that I think are kind of insane, but none of them stopped me from loving this movie. They're just like things that I feel like you're going to look back on in like 5 years and go, oh my God, yeah, that's a Superman movie that did that. That's wild. So many weird little side characters and so many other weird little details about this universe, and things that I think James Gunn and Peter Safran and Warner Brothers, to their credit, trust audiences to understand in a way that I think is very refreshing. Like, it's concepts that are kind of complicated if you've never even heard of them before, but I think because we as a movie going public have seen a lot of comic book movies that have gotten at some of these concepts, Superman is able to build on that and go, yeah, this is this thing, whatever, it's one of these, and everybody's like, all right, cool. And you understand the rules of it. And honestly, if you don't understand the rules of how something works, you'll figure it out. They tell you. And if there's something you're supposed to be worried about, they tell you. You know, I think this movie is going to be compared very fairly to All-Star Superman, because every single time they wanted to promote this movie or talk about this movie, James Gunn talked about All-Star Superman, or he had a picture of All-Star Superman when he even presented this movie. So like before the movie even existed, said this is going to be our North Star. And I think you can feel it. All-Star Superman is a very definitive take on Superman. This is a comic, one of the great Superman comics by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, and it's excellent. I would say definitely read it. It's all over the place in a way that I do think spiritually feels like this movie is taking a lot from that. I think that is supposed to be, without spoiling the conceit of All-Star Superman, that is a Superman who has already seen it all and is maybe at a late stage in his career. Well, this movie is not that. He is in very much the early stages of Supermaning. So like for that reason, there's just a lot about this movie that can't fully mesh with All-Star Superman. On the other hand, I do think thematically it shares a lot with All-Star Superman. And I think in terms of presentation, because All-Star Superman is very deliberately divided up into these vignettes, I think you do kind of get that from the Superman movie. So while I don't think it is like, you know, a one-to-one take on All-Star Superman, it is impossible to have read and know All-Star Superman and see this movie and not see some of the DNA, at least. And I believe even certain lines that I think were actually really great. Without spoiling it, there are teases for stuff in the future that are fine. My audience loved them personally, and there were some that surprised me, someone who has been hearing little bits and pieces about this movie for the last 2 years. And yeah, I cannot wait to tell you more in the spoiler full version, but for spoiler free, without saying anything more, and I'm gonna really cut myself off here because I could just feel myself using the word I'm bleeping that so you can't hear it. But people that have seen me talking about this on the Discord know which very, very bizarre side character I am talking about, who I will definitely own an action figure for and like have in the background in the near future. My Target doesn't have him. I can't get him, but I'll be in the city today. So anyway, so before I spoil anything, I will just say this movie is excellent. James Gunn did a fantastic job. The principal cast is some of the best, if not the best, takes on these characters, and the supporting cast also great, very fun. There are standouts. We'll talk about them in the next video. Should you see this movie opening weekend? Yes, if you have time, you know, if you can afford it, and like if you want to go out to a theater, it is a great theatrical experience, and it is just a really, really fun, good Superman movie. And I understand why a lot of people, that is exactly what they need right now. And while this movie is not perfect, and we'll get to some of the specific things that I think were weird, it is that. It is a very good, nice, fun Superman movie. And I cannot imagine most people that watch my channel are not going to enjoy it. But, you know, let me know in the comments what you think. If you agree, if you don't, tell me in the comments, tell me on Twitter, because all that stuff is great. And you know what else is great? Nebula. I would be surprised if you have not heard of Nebula by now. It is a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of YouTubers created back years ago, not that long ago, but like it's been around for a little while. The goal was we wanted an ecosystem where we could exist outside of the algorithm, so we wouldn't have to cater to views and stuff like that. We'd make the videos that we wanted to make, and at the same time we wanted to have space to make original projects with bigger budgets, and we have some really cool ones coming out. Obviously there's stuff like jet lag, which is hugely popular, and I don't need to explain probably what jet lag is to you. There's also Abolish Everything, which I really enjoy. Patrick Willems has a short film coming out soon called The Dinner Plan. Maggie Mayfish has a series coming out soon called Amy's Dead End Dream House, which from what I have seen seems like a take on like a Pee-wee's Playhouse, one of those shows where like the furniture talks to you, but with a more contemporary twist. And I think Maggie and her team are really smart and funny. I cannot wait to see this show. And then one of the biggest things we have coming up is a show we're working on called Subliminal. It's an anthology. It's very dramatic in the vein of things like The Twilight Zone, but instead of being based around some funky science fiction concept or whatever, this is all just based on complicated human relationships. A bunch of cool YouTubers are writing and directing episodes of this. We have actual actors doing this work. This is going to be really exciting. And one of the episodes, one that is going to be directed by Patrick Willems, is written by me. The episode is called Power Trip. I, again, don't want to spoil it because just when it comes out, you watch it and you'll love it. This is really my first like Nebula original thing. So I'm very excited about it. I've been writing it for a little while. If you're like, why is some of the video frequency slowed down a little bit? But I'm done with it. So that's the best part. You know, I've written it. So there it is. It's there. So it is up to Patrick and our production team to put this episode together. I think it is going to be really cool. And you're going to be able to watch that exclusively on Nebula. You can also watch all of my videos early and ad-free, including Mando Cut videos, which go up maybe a couple hours before they go live on YouTube. But still, that's early. You're seeing it before anybody else. And a yearly subscription to Nebula is a steal already at $5 a month or $60 a year. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/The Nando Cut, name of the channel, you can get a year of Nebula for just $3 a month. It is a great deal. It's a great way to see all my videos. There's a bunch of other creators on Nebula who you definitely already like, and there's a bunch of others that we're bringing on as, you know, time goes on. Who knows when you're watching this video? Check out Nebula. There will be people that are not on there when I'm recording it, and we have some pretty cool ones that I'm excited they're going to be part of Nebula, and we're always growing. So anyway, that is my pitch for Nebula. So watch my videos early and ad-free, and watch Subliminal, specifically my episode and all the other episodes, when they are released in the future. I do not know exactly when, but we're working on it right now, and I'm sure we will have more updates. So follow me on, you know, Twitter and all that stuff. I'm Nando V Movies all over the internet, and you will see updates from me. That's all I got. Stay safe. See you next time.